Musta Luige aare ja selle raamatu üks autoritest, Guillermo Corral, on siin praegu ja saab ka vastata raamatu tõlkija Kai Aareleidi küsimustele. Meil ei ole eriti palju välja antud graafilisi romaane. Ütleme nii, et see on meiepoolne katse vaadata, mis sellest edasi saab. Kas eestlased võtavad selle omaks? Lugu ise on ju väga põnev ja seikluslik. Ja kui läheb tõesti nii, et eestlased hakkavad juba harjuma niisuguste väljaannetega, siis võib sellega ka jätkata. I'm very glad to see that the book actually, a graphic novel by Guillermo Corral, translated by Kai Aareleid, is finished now and everybody can buy it in the shops. Graphic novels are not very common in Estonia. It's just the beginning and the first attempt to see what happens when you publish a graphic novel. But I think that the fact that the author is here in Estonia is able to answer all the questions will help. And also people who are interested in this picture side of the story will quite soon see at least some of the illustrations in the Estonian Children's Literature Center. And a bigger exhibition of the same author will be there from the beginning of June. But now I want to thank all the people involved. First of all, of course, Guillermo Corral, then the translator Kai Aareleid, Tiit Pruuli for support, and I would like to give the author Estonian stories from the forest. There are not so many forests in Spain. Forest and the sea. And now afterwards the author is going to sign the books.
Well, yes, thank you for everybody for coming here. It's really a pleasure to have been able to translate this book. For me it was very interesting and something I hadn't done before. It was a bit different from all the other translations, and it had some many similarities to translating a film, I think. So you are here, Guillermo, you're here as a writer today. I might as well address you as Señor Ambassador. That's why I'm going to ask first. Which came first? Writing, your vocation for writing, or your vocation for foreign relations?
Hi. Yeah. Well, thanks for the. Well, first, it's a pleasure to talk with you today. As it was really an honor to be translated by you, and the fact that you were a writer, honestly, I think it adds so much to the translation itself. So, thanks again. What came first? They came both hand in hand, I would say. I've always been interested by literature and comics in general, and books, and I've always written a little bit on the side. Also, literature and diplomacy have been related quite often. I mean, there are many. There are mostly writers that have become diplomats at certain time in their careers, but also the other way is true. And I mean, it is definitely a very literary career if you think about it. I mean, you travel, you see things, you meet people, you are in sometimes strange circumstances, interesting ones. So it's a rich life. I mean, it gives a lot of material. It doesn't give you so much time, which is part of the problem, because I mean, you have the ideas, but maybe you don't have the time. But anyway, it's a good career for writing, and yeah, they were definitely together always. So what can I say?
So when you were young, what did you read then? Did you read adventure stories? Adventure stories, or actually what I'm aiming to is, did you have any particular maybe figures you would like to follow, or maybe examples from the literature, or
Well, yeah. Well, I read lots of things, I must say. I mean, I always had like a very open horizon. I did read as a young child, very young, lots of comics. I mean, definitely Tintin, that is not so, probably wasn't so popular here due to the political background. That was very popular definitely in France, in Belgium, in Spain as well, and that was always a reference for kids our age, you know, and I mean, and many others, mostly first Franco-Belgian comics and Spanish as well, some American comics as well, and then of course I was reading literature in general, adventure stories for a while. I mean, while I was, I guess younger, you know, Jules Verne was a big reference, and Stevenson and Poe, of course, and Dumas, but that's, I mean, before I was, I don't know, 10, 12, and then, you know, all sorts of things. When I was about 9, 10 or something, I remember there was a very good collection that of 100 books for young readers, if you want, and they would issue one book a week. My father used to bring it to me. I still have this collection, and when I go to look at it, it's quite interesting, because first it was extremely good, and then it was not really only for youngers, you know. I mean, you had everything there. You had, of course, you had Dracula from Bram Stoker, for example, but you also had, I don't know, you had Eric Remarque, you know, without the First World War. You had Aldous Huxley. You had Stanislaw Lem. It was a fantastic collection, and I read all those books very young, so, you know, I kept, and I mean, I was lucky, and there were books around all the time, so it was always a thing to do.
So you got a good basis. The book we are talking today, Musta Luige, it's basically an adventure story, but it also addresses many actual themes, or themes that have to do a lot with ethics, if you wish, about the question whose heritage are the sunken ships, and how to keep your honor, and how to battle those big companies, treasure hunters. Can you enlighten how you actually came to this story? How was this idea born?
Sure, of course. Well, first, one thing I think is worth saying. Ultimately, the book has different layers, different levels. But one basic topic of this book, one issue, I think it can be very familiar to Estonian readers as well. This is a book about the value of memory, in a way. I mean, how important it is to preserve your memory. In this case, it's historical memory. I mean, the memory of, you know, something that, the sinking of a ship and the death of many sailors 200 years ago. But I think it's worth for many things. I mean, because this is the whole confrontation that goes on the book. You know, I mean, is memory something you can just, you know, trade with, or it's something that is very valuable and that you have to preserve? And I definitely think Estonians can understand this. How I came to this story? Well, I came to it by real coincidence, because I was there. So in 2007, in the summer 2007, the new Minister of Culture, whom I had met for other tasks and other issues, asked me to be his international advisor, and I accepted. I thought it was very interesting, so I went with him. And more or less at that same time, there was the announcement by this American treasure hunting company called Odyssey, that they had found like the biggest ever treasure in the seabed. I mean, like from a shipwreck. They didn't say, or they didn't give the information about which ship it was, but they did announce that they have found this huge amount of golden and silver coins, over 600,000 of them. So an approximate value of 500 millions of US dollars. So from the first moment, there was a suspicion in our Ministry of Culture that this was in fact a Spanish ship, and that we should try to recover it. and that the American company knew which ship it was, but that they had purposely hidden its identity. And so we started a legal case. Since I was working at the Minist's cabinet, I was involved with the story, together with other people, of course, the people that were mostly dealing with underwater cultural heritage, and the lawyers and other people. And then I followed this story for like 2 or 3 years in Madrid, and then I was posted as the cultural attaché in Washington, D.C. And since we had a legal case in the US, it was my task to follow the legal proceedings there. It ended up in the Supreme Court, and then we had to organize a whole rescue operation. I was doing that. So, I mean, by chance, I was really put in the way of the story. And that's another theme of the book that I think that is underlying. As you said, it's an adventure, but it's, I mean, if you read it, if you see it, most of the adventure just takes place in office rooms, right? It's not an action adventure. It's more an adventure of the mind in a way. And this idea that things also depend on your imagination is also a theme of the book. I mean, you can live this and you can do this work, and you can think, well, I'm just doing this boring, office work, going through papers and legal documents, or you can think that you are rescuing a treasure, from pirates, and then it's an adventure. And many times things just depend on how you look at them, right? How your imagination looks at things and how you value them. And that was also one of the, in a way, the challenges of the book. How you make an adventure that is thrilling and that the reader may want to read, without real action, just with with ideas and with concepts. I hope it works.
You succeeded very well. What do you think were the main challenges of working with a story that actually happened? So it says on the very first page that it's loosely based on actual events. This was what confused me very much, because I didn't know how much I would have to use real names for occupations, real names for organizations, or can I be creative?
Well, I mean, there was one reason for that, is that obviously we didn't want to end up in a US court, accused of defamation or something like that. So I mean, that was one reason to make it a bit fictional. But no, but there was another reason. I just said, what was the biggest challenge? Well, it was that I had too much information in a way. I mean, I had this whole thing, and the whole thing was extremely complicated. There were a legal proceeding, took 5 years. There were successive, steps to be taken. It was a very complicated story. So to translate this for a reader that doesn't know anything at the beginning, and make it understandable and make it enjoyable, required a lot of synthesis. I think that was tricky, and it forced me, of course, for example, to reduce a little bit the number of characters, to streamline the action, to take out the most boring parts, that kind of thing. And fiction was useful for that, In fact, I felt that using fiction, I could be closer to reality. I could give this feeling of wonder and excitement that otherwise would have been lost unfairly, I felt.
Well, we are talking about a book that has pictures. So a graphic novel has the equally important part of it is the visual part. As Krista already mentioned, we in Estonia don't have such a very long and tradition of our own stories. So would you be able to explain how this cooperation between the illustrator and the author actually works?
Yes, of course. Yeah, the election of the graphic novel format was a bit. I had doubts at the beginning. I thought about doing it in a different way, but then the opportunity arose when I met this person, Paco Roca, who's a fantastic, very talented author and very recognized in Spain. And to put it bluntly, I think it was the cheaper way for me to make a movie. Going for a full movie of course requires too much investment and anything. So this was a way of doing something very visual, very adventurous, but easily in a way. The cooperation worked very well. I mean, when I told him, okay, so Paco is an author that normally, I mean, people don't know him. He's worked a lot with the theme of memory, which I think is a reason why he was interested by this. This is a big theme for him. But normally he draws the stories he writes himself. And one must understand that, of course, drawing or crafting such book, it's a huge commitment for the artist. It takes well over a year, normally a year and a half at least, of his work, full time. I mean, it's really a lot of work. So it's difficult for an author to commit to a story. So when I mentioned it to him, I mean, this is a person that receives this kind of ideas all the time. So at the beginning, I mean, he said, yeah, okay, well, it sounds interesting, but of course he didn't want to commit himself yet. So he asked me, I mean, can you produce a few? I had written fiction, I had written stories and things like that, but I had never written a script. So he wanted to see something, so he asked me if I could write a few scenes. I did that. I wrote like the 4 or 5 scenes. I said to see if we could get along, and we did. He liked it. He felt he could work with it, and the process was quite smooth from there on. You know, I wrote the whole thing, and then we worked together in how to translate the scenes into panels, and then he drew it. It was fantastic. I mean, we're more or less the same age. We had read the same books. We understood each other, because the thing is, when you write the script, the main challenge, of course, is that the script is a very strange piece of writing, especially this kind of script, because you're writing the whole thing for one person. I mean, nobody's going to read the script normally. It's not going to be published. So you're just writing to be sure that this person who will receive it, the artist, will see what you see. I mean, that's what you want to achieve. You want him to see in his mind the images that are in your mind. So it's kind of tricky, but it's exciting also. I mean, and it's stimulating. It did work well. I mean, when his drawings came back, they were almost perfect from the beginning.
So did you actually describe what you had in mind?
Yeah. I mean, the best way to compare it, I would say the script is different than in a movie. I mean, if you read the movie script, for example, they are quite basic. There's the dialogue and a little bit about the situation, and not much more. At least the scripts I write are much more detailed. They are like, I would compare it to telling to a very close friend, to tell a movie in whole detail, you know, like kids do. Like, well, this is what you see, and this guy is wearing this, and then you look at this from this side, from this other side. You give as much detail as possible, so they can really choose what they want to show.
So how long did this process take altogether, from your idea until the book was published?
Well, of course, I mean, there was some dead time in the middle because he was busy with other projects. But if I put together the whole time we worked on it, I would say a couple of years at least. Something like that.
So by now this book has been translated into how many languages?
7 or 8, something like that. So it's been into, I mean, out of major German, French, Italian, English, Portuguese, Dutch also. Estonian now, I don't know if I may forget one, but yeah.
Any insights about how it works in different languages?
Well, so far it's worked very well. I mean, sometimes it's, that's also a pity because sometimes it's a bit difficult to know how it goes if you're not there, you know. So, but of course I get feedback or interviews, so you see what. So, for example, in Italy, I think it was very well received. In the US, I've seen lots of pretty good reviews as well. So, I mean, so far so good. I hope it works in Estonia.
And it's been made into a TV series.
It's made into a 6 episodes TV series, yes.
So, how did this happen?
Well, this, before the book was published, we were already approached by a producing company that wanted to pitch the book for a movie first. But then what happened is that once it was published, we got a call from Alejandro Amenabar. Amenabar is a very important film director in Spain, probably the most famous one together with Almodóvar. He's made several international movies like The Others, for example. It's a well-seen movie of his. And he called us. He said he basically said he had read the book and he wanted to do something with it. And at the same time, one the bigger Spanish streaming platform wanted to buy the rights. So they got to, we somehow matched them together. We said, okay, we're selling the rights if he does the show. And then this platform, Movistar, partnered with AMC, American Movie Channel, and they jointly produced the series, 6-episode series that was premiered like a bit more than a year ago in Spain and in the US. And unfortunately, I think it's not possible to watch it in Estonia at the moment. I hope it will come someday.
Unfortunately, people are very creative. Probably people who are interested will find it anyway. It was first your idea in your head, then it was on the paper by the illustrator, and then you suddenly saw it come into life. Your first thoughts, how did it feel?
Well, it's
flesh and blood suddenly.
It's a strange feeling, you know. I mean, I guess you can approach this process from different points of view. In my case, I had very clearly from the beginning. I thought, okay, I mean, the book is done, so this is my vision. The book is my vision, and together with Paco, this is what we saw, what we wanted to do, and that's what we did. The series is a different thing, you know. It's I mean, you must accept it's a huge investment. It's a lot of money. It's a different kind of product. It has to be more commercial in a way. So you have to accept that. Okay, I mean, you've given them your story, and they're going to do something with it. Basically, I like it. I think they did a very good job. Obviously, I would have done it different. But it's not a criticism. It's just that, you know, to each its vision. I mean, for the series, they had to change a few things. You know, it's an American production, so whites became African Americans, and gender changed. But I didn't care. It was good. It was good, and it works. But it's a work on its own. You know, my book is my book, and this is a series inspired on it, and it's always good fun, you know, to see your own characters, you know, getting alive, and it's great.
So the dialogue probably got longer. For me, this was particularly difficult to fit the text into the bubbles. Actually, I found it very useful that my editor has actually the experience of both translating films and editing films. So actually, she helped me a lot in fitting the dialogue. Sometimes making it shorter, sometimes, you know, saying things in a different order, or yeah. So I imagine if you have real people talking on screen, it probably has to be.
They did respect many things that are in the book, and quite a few lines of dialogue are exactly the same. Then they added things, you know. I mean, like you know, because they wanted to. Of course, it's difficult if you make 6 chapters. You have to, you know, the action must be a bit longer, and so they went a bit farther away from reality. You know, they made the characters more. And the main characters more different, so that there would be more tension between them, that kind of thing. But it's understandable. I mean, it's part of the thing. With as you're saying, the trick with text or dialogues in a comic book, of course, is that you just want to stick to the minimum necessary. I mean, if something can be understood just by visuals, you should have no text. That's the principle. I mean, you really try that the image conveys the information as much as possible, and the text is it's just the support for this. So yeah, sometimes it's interesting, and that's also an interesting part of the process is that the final text in the final bubbles, if you want, are only written in the last minute. Of course, they are in the script. But it is only at the last minute when every panel has been drawn that you decide that you go and change them. Because then you realize sometimes that you thought you needed to say something else, and then you see it's not necessary. In fact, you understand it. So if it's understandable like that, you don't have to say anything. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you realize you need one extra text to explain a little thing. But in general, that's the way. So I mean, as a writer, it's a bit limiting, of course, because you're trying to say less instead of saying more, you know. It's like Twitter, you know, like to count your characters, basically.
see that the audience. I see grown-ups only here. Somewhere, so
well, this is
it like from 1 to 99?
Well, in those times, this Tintin magazine, you know, where they had the books and they had the magazine that they published, and the motto on the magazine was from young readers for young readers from 7 to 77. And well, that's basically the scope, you know. The idea is that you can enjoy the book at different levels, right? I mean, like it happens to grown up. When you go back to a book that you enjoyed maybe as a kid, sometimes you realize that you miss so many things, you know, that you didn't even realize they were in the book. I mean, you just lived like you read the book on a superficial level, maybe the adventure level or whatever, and then when you go back, you realize it's also about politics, about economics, so many things. So this is the same thing, you know. A kid can read just the basic good against evil story. A grown-up will enjoy, you know, the politics, the legal thing, the rest. So, I mean, I hope parents buy it for the kids and read it themselves.
The lucky thing is we now have this book, Musta Luige, but the unlucky thing is that no other stories of yours have been translated into Estonian. What else do you write about?
Normally I normally write more like a short fiction, so that's a bit more, you know, more literary, more contemporary, more about, you know, how can I say, intimate world of people. It's a bit different, not necessarily adventures, you know, more emotional, more. It's a different realm, I would say, you know. I don't know. I'm open to many things. I'm working now on 2 other graphic novels. One with another artist, a woman artist, also from Spain. It's a much more literary, childhood evocation kind of book. And probably I'm also working on a sequel to this one. But different. I mean, set with the same character, but different setting, different story. So.
This was what I was actually going to ask next, if you would enlighten us what you're working on right now. How do you write? When do you write? You say it doesn't, the work of a diplomat doesn't give you much time.
You know the problem. Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I always think I will do it next day. You know, but tomorrow I will start. But no, the main problem is not that we don't have enough time. We do have time. The matter is that we don't have predictability. I mean, you are writing yourself. You probably know that what one really needs is a routine. I mean, maybe 2 hours a day can achieve a lot if you have these 2 hours every day, more or less at the same time. The problem is being a diplomat. You know, we constantly. I mean, of course, there are quieter weeks and there are busier weeks, but quite often, you know, you have events, you have things, different times, you have visits, so you constantly interrupted, and that's a bit of a problem. For a while I was in, for example, this book was written while I was in DC, in Washington DC, and the best time to write was at lunchtime. You know, I would go to Starbucks and skip lunch and write there for like an hour and a half or something before I went back to the office. But that was okay. Here I'm still struggling a little bit. But tomorrow I'll start early in the morning. I can call you once.
The last time we spoke, you told that yes, you usually write in cafes and you find it very inspiring. And some people want quiet, want a specific place. So it's definitely people and buzz for you.
Well, the good thing about, the good thing to write in a cafe, for example, is that you don't have that many distractions, right? You cannot go to see what's happening somewhere else. You cannot go to the fridge. You cannot go to. You're just sitting there, and there's people around, and you have your computer, whatever. And luckily, you can even disconnect the Wi-Fi, and you can just write. But it's getting more and more difficult these days.
You don't keep on listening to other people's conversations?
No.
Oh, you're lucky.
Not really. Well, it depends. But not really. What about you? What do you like to write?
I can't work probably in cafes because I keep listening to people saying things, and it keeps seeping into the story, and it's not good because the story Or maybe it is good. So, yeah. I was also interested in your recent reading impressions.
In general?
No, recent.
Well, I've been reading, you mean?
Maybe even newspapers.
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
well, actually, I was up to literature.
Yeah. Well, what recently, you know, what I have discovered, and I think that's the best recommendation I can give you, anybody that's interested in literature, is that there is a fantastic podcast by the New Yorker fiction, where writers read all the great stories published in the New Yorker. So you can listen to that. I try to listen to one short story every day, and they're amazing. They're amazing because they have such a huge amount of, you know, recent, like, well, not recent. I mean, they have like 4 or 5 decades of excellent writing, and they ask a writer to pick up a story that was particularly interesting to them, and they read them aloud, and then they discuss the stories, and it's a great way. I've discovered many writers of short stories that I didn't know there, and I was moving from one to the other. It's fantastic. I mean, I could mention a few, but I really think this is a great way to go. I mostly tend recently to read more short stories than novels, short stories and poetry more than novels, but I don't know, maybe it's also because of this time thing, or because we all losing concentration due to internet and everything, I don't know.
Any recommendations of Spanish language readers every Estonian should read?
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, well, I mean, I think it's there are quite interesting things that have been done in the Spanish language. Mostly, I must say by women. I would say I think it's the most interesting voices are coming from women. There's a lot in South America that is taking place. There's a whole, you know, branch that has this little bit of fantasy, but also a bit more horror side to it, like writers like Mariana Enriquez. That's, for example, I think you can find it here. It's a fantastic author. Or in Spain, authors like, for example, Sara Mesa is very good. Marta Sanz. And then of course, among the writers that have already been published, I mean, you have quite a few writers that have been published here that you know well, you know, like Javier Cercas, who would be at the Geatreat festival. I think he's excellent, for example, to start. Or I mean, of course, Vilamatas. Vilamatas is also published here. I mean, apart from the very good work that Barak does, I think it's also worth mentioning this small publishing house, Toledo, who's been, I mean, you know them well, and they have been doing a fantastic job, you know, publishing Spanish authors in Estonia. So, I mean, I think you should. I would encourage Estonian readers to take profit of what is already in Estonia, because they're good things. Not huge, but good things.
You've been living in Estonia now long enough to be able to say what's been the most challenging thing in adapting with Estonian life. Can be anything, actually. Just a few.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there is anything really challenging or like difficult. I mean, all in all, I think this is an easy place, I would say, in general. I mean, for European, right? I mean, this is a European city. I mean, like you know, and diplomats, or sometimes we talk among ourselves in these terms. You know, this is a city with bookstores and cafes, and you know what it means. It means it's a European city where you can live, because you can walk and you can see people and you can get around. So I think Tallinn is a great city, and it's calm, it's green. There's so many beautiful parts of it. The parks, there's the sea. I mean, that's a huge thing. Of course, Madrid is landlocked, so I mean, we always look forward for the sea. What is challenging? Well, the same thing as for Estonia, darkness, right? But that's I mean, sometimes people, you know, they say, oh, because you're from the south. I think it's not because I'm from the south. It's for everybody, you know. I mean, just go out today and you will see how happy Estonians are in June, you know, and much more talkative and smiling than in February. I mean, what can we do? You know, we need the sun. I don't feel the cold challenging at all. For example, I think it's it's darkness. No, that is difficult, but I mean, it's a minor thing. Honestly, I find it very easy, to be honest.
Hey, maybe someone from the audience has questions. This would be a good time. Yes?
Yes, thank you for this very exciting interview and occasion. I have a question for both of you, actually. Do you have any plans to translate this fine book to other languages? I mean, the Finnish language and the Swedish language.
It would be. I mean, it would be wonderful, but of course, it doesn't depend on me. You know, I mean, the way books find publishers is kind of tricky. But of course, I would love to have it translated in more languages, and maybe the fact that it's in Estonian would, you know, help with translation to Finnish, for example. Hopefully.
Any other questions? It's a really rare occasion to be able to ask from an author.
I could ask about the collaboration with the illustrator. How was it? I mean, did he get the text and did all by himself? Maybe he had to cut off some, just illustrate something you wrote, or how did it work?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, the way I mean, to basically describe it, there were like 3 parts in the making of this book. So there was one part where I worked alone, writing the script. Then there was a part where we worked together, so to speak. I mean, because there's the moment when he takes the text, and he needs to make in each page a series of decisions. Basically, which images you're choosing to illustrate this. And I mean, this is a very interesting thing with comics, which is, I mean, comics resemble in a way a movie, right? Things are visual. But if you think in a movie has movement, of course. In a comic book, you don't have movement. I mean, it's a collection of still images. So where is the movement? The movement is in between the panels. It's in the mind of the reader. So you see a guy entering his house and switching on the light, and then you see he's taking his jacket, and then he's preparing to sleep. And in your mind, he's just walking around. I mean, you see him, but it's just in your mind. So the artist has to decide which moments, you know, which precise moments will work to convey the sense or the feeling of action that is taking place. So in this part, the way, I mean, each author is different, but the way Paco works, he makes like a small book of sketches. I mean, he draws everything on pencil, but quickly, you know, small pages, rough sketches, and what he would do is, you know, do a few, send it to me, discuss them. Is this okay? Is this not okay? What do you think? I mean, I have doubt here, whatever. So we did that whole thing, or maybe taking decisions, you know, I mean, well, let's take this scene out, let's put a new one here because we need some extra thing. Sometimes we'll say, can you write me a new scene about this? Write it for him. So that was together, and then finally there was a third part of the book where he worked on his own once we had agreed on the whole sketches, and then finally we sat together to just review the dialogues and everything. One funny thing of the whole thing is that I was while he was doing this mise en page, I mean this translation to the pages, I was posted in Cuba, in Havana, and there were no internet basically, only very limited access. So we it made things complicated, but we worked with these audio messages. So he would record these very long messages. And whenever I had the occasion, maybe once a day, whatever, I could download them and reply with another audio message. And also with the time difference, it was kind of interesting, you know, because he would send me something before going to bed there when it was midday in Havana, so I would have time to listen to it and to reply, and the answer will be ready for him to start his next day. So it worked. It just worked very well. So it was fun.
Can I still ask how long did it took for him to illustrate?
year and a half, I would say. From, I mean, counting also probably with the sketching time, maybe 3 to 4 months to do the first sketching, and then I mean that phase is quite difficult because even if those are rough sketches, is when you put everything into the page, and then you have to, of course, it's about refining the drawing and the ink and the color, but the basic setup.
What did you find the most enjoyable during this whole process, and which part was the most difficult for you?
Well, the most enjoyable, I think, is when something that is only in your mind, and that it's not totally. I mean, it's an idea, it's a feeling. But when you finally see it coming alive, well, that's really beautiful thing. And in this case, I mean, Kai was asking about the movie, about seeing the characters alive. But really, when I saw the characters alive is when I saw the drawings. That was when really it was like, oh, they are here. And the most difficult, well, yeah, I mean, writing is difficult, but in this particular case, for some reason, it was kind of easy, really. I mean, I thought it would be harder, and normally it's hard. But for some reason, maybe because I had lived many of the events, or maybe because I had it in my mind, or maybe because we understood each other, it wasn't really difficult. Not in this case, which is great, because it's not the case now.
It's based on real events. Did you get feedback from the prototypes, or are they recognizable in a way?
He is the prototype.
No, from one, but it's another person.
Other characters, yeah. Well, I mean, of course, some are very, very happy with the characters. Some think they should be there, and they are not, and and they did so much, and why are they not there? And then they can always write their own book if they want. But it's kind of tricky. No, in general, people took it well, and they are more or less recognizable, but still they are changed. Because as I said before, the main problem you have is that reality is very, very complex. I mean, if you count the number of people that were really involved into this thing, it would be unbearable for the reader, I mean, there were new people all the time, but it's too much information. You cannot have 20 main characters. You need to concentrate, So that's but the ones that took it better or worse were the politicians, of course. Those that had it better liked it very much. Those that thought they had done a lot, which they hadn't, but they thought they had, were angry because they hadn't been, what can you do? But, one thing that is interesting about the character, I said the main character is a little bit my alter ego, but not totally, but I follow this. Maybe this is interesting commenting this Tintin, which is the reference of modern comics, obviously. It's a very good example because if you I hope you have in mind Tintin's face is the most basic face you can have. It's basically a ball with 2 eyes and a little nose and a mouth, and in fact it's kind of a boring character. But I mean, all the others around him are much more interesting. They have bigger personalities, they're more developed, whatever. But this is not a fault. This is an advantage, and it's done on purpose because you want your main character to be a bit neutral. You don't want him to be too pronounced because you want the reader to identify with the main character. The main character is a vehicle for the reader where you can put your own ideas. So that's why also the character, I use some of my experiences to build him, but still, he's younger than I was at the time, he's more inexperienced. At that time I was like 35, 36. In the book he's just 25, he's just starting, he has no experience at all. Because that's a way for the reader, to discover everything that the character discovers. The character gets to work in the ministry for the first time. So the reader goes with him and learns how it is. And well, it's a trick that makes it work for readers.
Has anyone else who was in the process when this treasure was discovered written anything about it? Maybe Not the jump.
Not really. I mean, there have been the whole case was extensively covered in the media. So there have been articles, there have been documentaries, but not a full book. Not that I know. I don't think so. But there's lots of material about it. Lots and lots. I mean, lots of very long articles and things. Yeah. Or scientific things also.
Yeah, but now.
No, not this kind. No.
So it's still a possibility for someone who's not satisfied with.
Well, of course. Anybody could do it. I mean, that's. Yeah, of course, and I mean that's also a thing that is kind of interesting, because people when you say that this is based on real events or whatever, people get very interested into this thing. I mean, how much is real, how much is not real? It is really not very important, you know. It's a material that I found interesting on itself, you know. I mean, if I had wanted to write a very detailed account, step by step, I would have done a different thing. That's not the point. I mean, the point is joining that adventure. It is very close to reality, but that's not really important.
So the sequel is something you've invented totally, or you're not really?
Somehow. No, not totally. No, not totally. Definitely not totally. No. It is connected to reality, but it's fictional as well. I'll tell you in fact.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have a couple of questions. You were mentioning how the main character benefits of being neutral. Is that something that you've used in the past as well, or is it something that you've put into the book for the first time? And my second question is, did it end up being a Spanish ship or not? You didn't mention it at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. No, this neutral thing, I mean, was particular in this case, because if you write a short story, it's totally different. I mean, normally you do want your character to be very specific or very interesting, but in this case, I mean, the comic format is a bit different, you know, because I also feel when you read fiction, normal fiction, the fact that you're not seeing images make it easier to identify yourself with that voice in a way, to connect with it. But when you have a character, when you're seeing somebody, then it becomes more important that at least you can reflect yourself into this blank page, if you want. That is when it's neutral. And of course, the ship turned out to be a Spanish ship. Yes, it did. I mean, the main. What makes the intrigue interesting is how it was proven that it was a Spanish ship, and what it took, you know, to really first to prove it, and then to convince the judges, and then and to win the case. I mean, you must take into account that there are many. For example, from an American point of view, but not only American, I must say, not only American, because a lot of people in Europe think the same way. And many Americans don't think that way, starting with the State Department, who supported us very much. But for a lot of people, there's this basic idea. I mean, what do you want a sunken ship in the bottom of the sea for? I mean, why not take it if there's money there? And of course, then there are there are many issues that arise there. And the basic one is that if you don't have the means to really preserve it, you shouldn't take it out. I mean, if you have the capacity, the neurological capacity to go and destroy everything and whatever, so okay, maybe then it's worth doing it. But you cannot just go, you know, it's like digging around. I mean, you cannot just go into the ruins of maybe, I don't know, you know, a 13th century castle in Estonia and just, you know, let's take everything apart and see if there's something of value here. That's the way that's something that's explained in the book also. The way these companies take the treasure. I mean, it's just basically like a huge vacuum cleaner. You know, like they go to the seabed and they take this enormous. It's basically a vacuum cleaner, huge one. So they remove everything, and you must take into account that a 200-year-old ship made of wood is, of course, extremely delicate when it has been there for such a long time. So you destroy a lot of evidence that is interesting, even in historical terms, and it can be studied even at the bottom of the sea. You know, it's like taking the Titanic. I mean, if you would recover the Titanic, you wouldn't probably, you know, bear the effort.
questions, I think it's time to say thank you.
I want to thank people.
Yeah, and you will be able to get autographs afterwards.
Of course.
You wanted to?
No, I just want I wanted to say thanks to a number of people. I thank you at the beginning, but of course, I mean it's quite exceptional. It's a privilege to have been translated into Estonian. I'm now part of a reduced number of very prestigious Spanish authors that have been translated to Estonian, so I'm only talking to those. But anyway, it's a privilege, and it wasn't easy. So I just wanted to mention a few people that make it possible. Starting with Anne Pikov, friend and illustrator herself, who was like the first person that got interested into the book, and I thought that it was worth trying to promote graphic novels a bit more in Estonia. So it was really decisive for this publication. Then Krista Kair from Barrak, of course, who really believed into the book and decided to go ahead. Tid Bruli, who has made it possible. Yourself, of course. Viven Nor, who's here, has always been supporting this project, and we'll have an exhibition of Paco Rojas' work at the Center for Children Literature at the end of May. So thanks to everybody. It's really an honor, and of course I will be more than happy to sign.
I really hope this will open new possibilities for graphic novels in Estonia, and I hope when you finish your next graphic novels, they will be translated and we will be able to read them. So I just have to wish you good luck with those. Good luck with the writing. I wish you time for writing.
Concentration.
And concentration. Many cafes and good coffee. What else? I think we just thank all the audience.
Yeah, for coming here in a beautiful spring day where the natural tendency is to be outside. So thank you.
Yes.